Sarah. They are here to talk to us about the National Competency Framework and how we can use it to do some skills gap analysis to find the areas that perhaps we need some more work. Let us know about some of the resources that are available for some of that, filling some of those gaps, and answer any questions that you might have in regards to using the competency framework. So I think we have Sarah there. If you want, do you have a presentation to put up? I'll stop mine.
We do indeed. We're not
Cool.
winging. We're not winging
Whew,
the whole
that's
thing.
good.
Yeah. Just give me a moment. Come on. There we go. That should be showing now.
Yep, can see it. Thank you.
So hello everybody, I'm Sarah Blundell. I'm the lead for data and analytics development professionalisation here in NHS England, and my fantastic colleague is...
My name is Andy Lavelle. I am Senior Manager for Analytical Professionalisation working at NHS England.
Well, we're all there temporarily, let's be honest. So what we're here today, as Coraline has very kindly given us a great intro, is to talk about the National Competency Framework and how that can help you support your talent, etc. And also to touch on a little bit of the changes for version 3, which is due for release on the 19th of March. And so therefore, if you've not been using the Competency Framework, we would urge you to wait and use it from whence that version is available. But just in case any of you have never come across the National Competency Framework before, what is it? It's a standardised skills and competency framework that basically sets out across a range of different data roles what are sort of entry-level skill requirements and progressing up through different practitioner levels to enable you to understand how will I progress in my career if I'm staying in a particular data role? How do I have some sort of standardised language then that could be used across regardless of what organization, etc. But similarly, what are the skills for different data and analytics roles that exist? So if you are interested in, I'm currently a performance analyst or a data analyst, or maybe working in engineering, what are the comparable skills that exist within other data and analytics careers? How do I stack up against what people are being asked for in those areas? And therefore, if I wanted to develop myself in a different direction or specialize, what would I need to do in order to get there? And it's really simple from that perspective. But how is it structured? So as I said, the main element, the core competencies, are related to the different job families, and there are now 8 job families in the version 3. The new one is the evaluation role that has come out. We link up at the highest level into the government digital and data capability framework. So we aren't just plucking these things randomly from the air. We do align with what are the current trends that come out from the pan-government body. But what we obviously do is then take that and do the detailed work for the NHS and local government and public health, particularly, to understand what is being needed to be able to do these roles in our area. And it's then broken up with then additional areas of skill, things that would go across different roles, specialist areas. So if you've got specialist technical skills in particular coding languages or niche skills, they would sit in specialisms, the things that we wouldn't expect the 90% to be able to do. Then when we have what we call ancillary frameworks, and these are things that would go across all DDAT roles. So they're not specific to data and analytics. So your key behaviours, your equality, diversity, inclusion, your reflective practice, your leadership and management skills, your writing business cases, all these things, the things that are not universal to data and analytics, but as professionals within the NHS and within public health teams in local government, we're still expected to have those types of skills. They're in our job descriptions. And then lastly, domain. So domain is, again, a new area we've had it in there, but we've always said this has been defined locally. The only exception to that is this year, the new public health intelligence domain that we've been working on with OHID and local authority public health teams to define public health intelligence competency domains for the very, very first time. So what does that mean? So since 2022, data professionals have been using the framework to self-assess their own skill level. So answer those sorts of questions like, so how would I articulate the skills that I have? How are they aligning? Where am I on the practitioner level? Have I got skills at all the same level across the board, or have I got some skills that are a lower level and some skills at a higher level? Absolutely fine. How do I benchmark myself? How do I identify what my gaps are? So if I'm wanting to go into those PDP conversations with my manager and they say, what do you want to develop on? I actually have got some idea of the skills that I'm saying these are the things that I need to I've either got gaps in my trying to complete a practitioner level that I've not had the opportunity to sort of do any of this, or similarly, if you're wanting to progress or wanting to transfer between develop more specialized skills from a different data role, this enables you to identify that, and that is very much in this self-assessment tool. So how have people been using this? So I'm going to reference one of our colleagues, Kaylee, and she's based over in the Northwest Ambulance Service. And basically, she came across the competency framework because she'd come into this career and she was trying to create her own, basically, because she likes to have a very structured way of doing her own development. So she was searching for things, didn't find anything at the time, started constructing her own. And when she was then starting to look for how does she evidence things, that's when she came across the National Competency Framework. So for her, she was able to use it to reassure herself that she was developing herself in the right areas, that she was then able to take that into conversations with her manager, use it to construct her personal development plan, help her to develop, and then ultimately to go for a more senior role and get it, because she was able to sort of articulate what her skills were and how she was demonstrating them. It gave her the confidence to basically feel that she was ready for that. It helps offset that imposter syndrome, etc. And it provided her that structure. Now, she still uses it. Eve, obviously, she did her initial self-assessment. She's been using it to track her progress. She's now managing people within her team, and she uses it for them to help them identify their own areas for personal growth, have a more structured conversation as a manager, to be able to support them to develop these sorts of skills. So yes, so for her it's been really, really useful. And you don't just have to listen to me say that. What we've been doing as part of the work is capturing people's experiences as we go along, because Andy and I are the used car salesman of the National Competency Framework. We would tell you it's excellent because we've been responsible for helping to create it, but what you would believe is the responses from others. So what we've been doing is capturing case studies of individuals and managers and strategic uses of it. We've also been doing podcasts with these guys, so you can hear it in their own words of what they've thought of that. We've obviously got some links on there where you can then go off and not just listen to Kaylee, but listen to Connor, who was obviously a new entry down in Dorset, and listen to them guys from Arden and Gem, how they've been using it across, and many, many others, etc., of where we've been doing. Now, Andy, it's over to you now. Can you take control?
I can take control. There we go.
Fantastic.
So what's coming up next? So how do we think data roles are going to change in 2026, and how does the NCF help? As Sarah was talking, I know I should have been listening to what Sarah was saying, but kind of my mind drifted. And I was just mulling out. So you may not believe it, but I've been in the NHS for 35 years. And when I joined, there was one PC in the office, and we used to write programs on HES extract data, writing a program called Fortran. This was when I was working at Northern Regional Health Authority up in Newcastle. And I'm not just saying that to show that I'm really old, but the amount of data that we now can access, the processing power that we now have access to, the things that we are able to do with data has morphed beyond compare from those early days when I joined. And so what's happening, and particularly the kind of acceleration over the last 10 years, we're seeing a huge change in the way that roles are having to adapt, roles are having to sorry, I just forgot Sarah put the animation on there. How they're having to respond to the ways of working and the resources that we now have. So one of the things that we've been trying to look at within the 10-year plan are what are some of those things that are being asked for as future things that this new NHS is going to be doing, and how can we then start to work that back into what are those skills that people are going to need, what are the things that we're going to be wanting to be delivering and moving forwards that maybe we've not always had the scope to do or the time to do. So certainly we know that we're going to have a growth in more specialized roles such as data scientists, machine learning engineers, as we get more sort of complex systems that are going, bringing in AI into that as well. And data ethics. As I said, we now have access to such a wide range of data, but should we always be linking the stuff that we're linking? And are we always processing that data and sharing it in the ways that we should be? As things like, more reproducible analytical pipelines, more ready access to data becomes available to people, we may see a decline in some of those traditional analytical roles that we've had. Certainly, the days where I used to produce contract monitoring reports and send them out to people and have them look at it, there'll be things now that are going that will replace the need for those sorts of roles. So how are we going to adapt and change and move into a new way, and what are those skills that we want to be doing? And I know particularly kind of AphA has sort of really kind of been showcasing the work of data storytelling, and Sarah and I were talking about some work from the observatory, which is the Analyst X Observatory, where we're doing stuff and talking about how poorly worded questions from people often mean that we've got to spend a heck of a lot of time doing stuff and then changing it and then going back and saying, was it this that you want? Did you mean this? Was it actually this? And actually, if we get better and better at that scoping and helping to understand what people are, then we understand what the issues are that they're doing, and we can help get the right information that we are. But then how we then convey that information to people. Data literacy is a two-way conversation between people in terms of making them less afraid of seeing numbers, but also in us thinking, what's the best way that I can frame this information and this knowledge and this understanding that I've got into a way that is going to maximize the benefit for the person that I'm talking to, that's going to help them make better decisions and get better outcomes for patients. So certainly that role of data storytelling, and as I said, that stuff around the ethics of whether we should be doing stuff. Definitely more data engineers in supporting those reproducible analytical pipelines and how we get those data flows. Data leaders are crucial. I mean, AphA kind of really champions the Chief Data Analytics Officers Network. That's what we need. We need those high profile people that are pushing not just for analytics, but high quality analytics, who are getting people to realize that we need that information, that we need that evidence, that we need those things that are there, not just the kind of traditional things to make sure that we got so many widgets through the system and that we did so many finished consultant episodes and how much we've charged for this and all that sort of stuff. But actually, have we impacted on people's lives? Have we made improvements in how our services run? Have we helped make sure that things are efficient and effective? And we have so much that we can bring to that in terms of how we understand what the demand is through population health modelling, how we look at what those changes are going to be based on the demographics that we know, how we can run through scenarios with people, how we could say, well, you've got three options. If we did option A, this is what happens. If we did option B, this is what happens. Option C, that, that type of simulation and scenario modelling. Those are the sorts of things where I think we're going to see big growth in the NHS as we move forwards. So where does that put us then as existing staff? How do we make sure people use AI ethically? There was something that I heard on the news today that was about, don't trust asking AI for medical advice because it will often give you wrong advice. And yet people are so willing to say, well, I asked Copilot and he told me this. England won the World Cup in 1746 or whatever it may be, because it feeds off what it can gather, but what it may be gathering is not always right, and it can end up being biased. So how do we make sure that people are doing things as they should do, and validating what's coming there? And where do they go to validate that? How do we build in that kind of sense checking? How do we make sure people are doing stuff correctly with data, that they are maintaining its security and its integrity, and looking after it the way it should do, curating it, I guess, is the best way of doing that, and that we're doing it to the best standards, but we're maintaining that transparency for people that need to know, and maintaining that security for people that don't need the access to certain bits of the data. And how then do we look at those competency frameworks so that people understand, where AI sits and how they should be doing it, and how people understand how it fits into their role, and how they can be making the best use of it, and how they can be giving it a kind of healthy skepticism at times onto the outputs that it does. But it is going to be there, and it is going to impact everyone's lives, no doubt about it. But let's make sure we're using it in the way that's going to maximize the benefits that we can. So what are job roles going to look like? This is just some imagining that we've been doing. So rather than doing lots of stuff on cleaning data, doing some basic statistics always makes me chuckle, because I did a degree in statistics, and then people say, well, what's the average? Can you do me a run chart on that? It's like, there's so much more that we can be doing with this. We need to kind of move into that space where we're getting more what they call higher intensity analytics, predictive stuff, complex multiple data source modeling. A boss of mine, we always used to talk about the Swiss cheese analogy, how you start to pull together a number of different data sources, and looking at data sources maybe we haven't always traditionally looked at. If you have a department within a hospital that is, really busy in its activity, is there an issue with staffing? Or are they getting more complaints? Or are they getting poor outcomes? Are they getting higher readmissions rates? Are there knock-on effects from that higher volume of activity that we can start to look at within the data sources, to start to triangulate and see what else might be there that we can see that helps tell us those stories? I've mentioned about specific job families and domain stuff. So the days where you look on NHS jobs and you type in information analyst and you come up with 101 different jobs, that's not going to be the way that it goes now. We've seen, people talking about data analysts, data ethicists, machine learning engineers, data scientists. We're the new cool kids on the block, but they're not so new anymore. Still pretty cool, I reckon. But people are going to start to think about what are the different things that we need with this environment. People that are going to be there talking about strategies, building those data strategies. What's the information that we need in order to make sure that we're making sure that the outcomes we're actually delivering, and we can evidence that we've made the impacts that we want? How do we communicate to people the importance of data? People forever and a day, always saying, well, data quality is bad because no one really understands why it's important. How do we play a part in that? When I was talking with Sarah today, we were talking actually, is every information request that you get, but maybe not everyone, but we get a more considered information request, is it actually treating it like a mini project, setting the timescales and the expectations, and avoiding project creep? How many times have you done a piece of analysis, given it to someone, they say, oh, could you just add in the last 10 years worth of data? Or could you just do a comparison with our neighbours because we're not sure? Or could you just add an age breakdown for that? Project creep, that's part of the scoping thing, but also how do we make sure that we get viewed as valued people? And you can't just do something within analytics. There's a lot of stuff that goes in there. So it's not just the technical execution of what we do, it's all those other things that we're now going to start to play a part in. All that stuff that we've done around, data quality check-in, compliance reporting on numbers and stuff like that, keeping dashboards going. Oh, must keep that dashboard going. All right, I'll keep that dashboard going. How many people have looked at the dashboard? 3 people in the last year. Fantastic. That was a lot of time spent doing that to maybe not get the stuff. And that's sort of, occasionally we get asked to do some exploratory analysis, but not as often really as we should. So we're going to have more of, as analysts, we come with a creative thinking and critical thinking skill set that's built into us. How do we address this problem? Where are the sources that I can go? What are the methodologies that I can apply? What are the softwares that I could be doing to this? What are the questions that I'm going to be answering? All those sorts of things that we've got. As I said, the storytelling, how do we convey that? How do we make sure that we've got those impacts that are coming across? How do we help people to understand complex results, but in a way that helps them take action? And how do we help shape business strategies? How do we help people go forwards to go, well, yes, we might want to do this, but how are we really going to help understand that we've made those impacts that we want and that we've really got the outcomes that we want? This is going to become a huge thing in the 10-year plan, is really evidencing that the impacts are there. And analytics and the role that we play has such a huge part to play in that. And we have such an untapped skill set that people never think to come to us, that we really need to kind of bring to the fore. And the last one, as I say, limited stuff at the minute around AI roles, but in the future we're going to have AI systems managers, people managing all those chatbot functions, all those things that go on, people training people how to use those chatbot functions and all those other things that go on. And what prompt engineers, they're better than sluggish engineers because they turn up on time and they're very efficient. But actually, it's like us writing a SQL query. You can write a SQL query that will get you the stuff that you want, and then you download it into Excel and you do a whole set of filters and a whole load of other stuff and kick out some bit and do some data cleansing and do that, and then you get another spreadsheet and you link it to that one. Whereas actually, if you were writing different ways within SQL, you could write more effective, more efficient queries that pulled and did a lot of that stuff together. And it's exactly the same as writing prompts within AI. How you structure them, the way you ask things, the way you tailor things to make sure that you're getting the outputs that you want, can really help you get the outputs and the understanding that you need far, far quicker than maybe people do at the moment. Is this handing back to you now, Sarah, at version 3? Or am I carrying on?
You're carrying on until I get to the next break.
I'm carrying on until you shout stop.
Yeah.
So this is where we are with the framework. I think Sarah said the framework came about because people had a need for a framework. When the initial work was done on the framework, that kind of AphA were a real integral part of setting that discussion up and that piece of work. There are about 42 different frameworks that people were using. There was no consistency. There was no way to kind of benchmark and get that understanding of where you were. GDAD was starting to do stuff. So GDAD is the government data digital and capability framework that's available online. I think the link is on there that people can look at. And they talk about roles, but what we really wanted to do within the framework is the skills to help people be able to see, what do I need to do to move to that next level? So that's kind of a lot where the roles come from, because clearly they're doing a lot of horizon scanning on things. So with version 3 that's coming up, building on the incredible work that's been done so far, which I will say, is we've brought in a role specifically around evaluation. That thing that we're saying about it's got brackets digital, because actually the skills for evaluation are one thing. The what you are evaluating is slightly different, clearly, because this is a digital and data framework. We're mainly going to be looking at digital stuff, but understanding what do we need to be doing to do good evaluation, what are the processes, what are the methodologies that we be using, what are the different stages within a new system being implemented that we can look at. We could say, actually, we've evaluated it, what you were trying to do was fantastic, how you actually tried to implement it was awful, that's why it didn't work. Really understanding what it is that makes the impacts on getting stuff. We've brought in an entirely new domain. So Sarah said we've not done domains before, but we have had a go this time at doing domaining in consultation with public health colleagues, because one of the things about the framework that it was designed to do was to build a level of consistency across health and social care. people in local authorities to when you're looking at integrated intelligence functions, getting an understanding across the whole ICB area of what's that analytical capability that we have, who are the experts that are sat within local authority that may have skills that would really benefit the whole system, or the person in the mental health trust, or somebody working in the ambulance service or whatever. How do we look at those skills? How do we get people talking and sharing things and sharing their skills and knowledge, and also building those communication networks that we did? We're great at doing it during COVID. We all came together and work together on a common problem, and then that common problem went, and it's almost like at times everything's now kind of gone back into where it was, and we don't talk to each other as much, which is a real shame. So the public health intelligence one is a way to look at, okay, what does the domain mean, what should be in there, how can we help people within public health, see where their role is, but also see what the commonalities are. From my personal experience, when I was working as a contracts analyst in Hereford, and I decided I wanted to move into public health, I had no idea what to do. It took me 7 years to transition from that role into actually getting into public health and getting a public health qualification, because there were steps I had to go through, but I couldn't find those at the time. So having something now that helps me say these are the sorts of things that we're doing within public health is fantastic. There's a new competence in there, data ethics for data analysts, because data ethics is going to be key for us all. So we've put that in so that everyone can start to understand. We've also put something in about reflective practice, which has gone into the behaviours domain. So reflective practice is great for a whole host of reasons. It's a chance to learn. It's a chance to kind of look and say, what work have I just been looking at? How's it gone? What could I have done better? What were the successes from what I've just done? What were the impacts that it made? It helps you build your portfolio of evidence, which in turn is going to help you go for professional accreditation or for new jobs, because you have examples of things that you've done, learning that you've taken from that, and new things that you can put forward. So the reflective practices, then there's lots of tips and hints and things that you can look at that will help you construct and develop your reflective practice. The data ethicist role, when it initially came in, was just for those higher bands, but actually now it's been expanded out to go right the way from the associate practitioner, so people can build careers within data ethicists. We have 3 new specialisms, and we have revisions on 2 of the existing specialisms. So we're always, the specialisms is always the thing that was going to change and develop quickly, because new stuff comes along, new things are going to be thought of that people need. So just a bit more detail on that. So the evaluator role, as I said, it came into the GDAD framework in May 2025. So just in time for us to then build it into our cycle for doing stuff. 5 main competency areas that you've got there, as I said, taking you through why we evaluate, how you design, how you collect data, how you lead and manage evaluations, and then how you share the findings of those evaluations. And they're going to be really, really key skills going forwards in the delivery of the 10-year plan and evidencing that we've actually delivered what we said that we would do. Public health intelligence domain. So we're looking at an introduction to public health. What's the context of all this stuff that we're doing in public health? Public health intelligence and decision making, what are the processes that people go through in order to make these decisions that are affecting, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people all over the country. How public health intelligence functions work and what are the different skill sets that you get within there. And then the introduction to epidemiology, which is a really fantastic branch of analytics, but in such a great area to look at. If you are interested in public health, doing the epidemiology is eye-opening. I really, really enjoyed it. Also, to bring us up for alignment with the GDAD, as I said, we've added the data ethics to the data analyst role, so that we can think about what are those ethical considerations all around AI, but also other stuff that we do. I can see somebody just asked, is there a non-digital? There isn't, but all the skills, I think, all the core skills, I think, for an evaluator will be exactly the same, because as I said, there's a skill set for evaluating and there is what you are evaluating. So I think you'll have a good grounding in evaluation if you look at the skills that we've got there. Expanded the practitioner levels for data ethicists so that you can now build a career in data ethics, and adding the reflective practice to behaviours that we've spoken about as well. Once again, brilliant, and really set you up for your AphA professional accreditation process. New specialisms: design and analysis of studies, literature searching, critical appraisal and research skills, and then responding to consultations. Some of these came about from things that came up in the public health intelligence domain work, because we thought actually this is a really good skill that actually should be right the way across the analytical field. So it shouldn't just be something that sits within public health, it's something that's going to apply to everyone. So that's why those have come in. And then we've revised stuff around the advanced statistics and the SQL proficiency based on feedback that we've had from people during the year, so that people can then, get a better understanding of what we're meaning on certain things. How to get started with the NCF Lego team.
Yeah.
Sarah, I believe this is you now.
This is me. Yay!
I can stop for breath.
I will take control back. Excellente. So yes, you can tell when it's all my sections because the kiddie stuff comes in. So how do you get started? Everyone was always saying, what do I do first? Well, the first step is always to familiarize yourself with the framework itself and what's in it. The next stage, and I'll go into that into a bit more detail in a moment, because it's easy to say, harder to do. Then obviously using that to create your own personal plan on your own targeted needs based on the self-assessment, and aligning this to what's available through the NHS digital data academies, which I'll talk about also and later. And obviously then the third step, I would say, for people is to get engaged and to stay connected, to get involved with opportunities through our Analyst X communities, which enable you then to be kept up to date with, and follow our LinkedIn pages, so then you never miss updates from the academies or the competency framework or from Analyst X. It's an easy way of having things pushed to you rather than you needing to search for things. So how am I doing that first step? Well, we've made tools, obviously, to make it as easy as possible for you, because a dry document PDF document that you have to read through is not massively helpful. So what we've done is we've basically taken the National Competency Framework and put them into 3 different sets of tools. And the tool I'm going to talk about today is the self-assessment. We have got tools for managers and we have got a strategic level tool, but the whole point of the self-assessment tool is it allows you to go through and identify the skills you have and the skills you want to develop. And it does this in a really simple way, with a tab for every single data family, a tab for every ancillary framework, a tab for the specialisms, a tab for the domain. And you literally go through reading through the different practitioner levels and the different skills, and you mark yes to the level that you can do and T to the level that you want to target. And if you've not got a skill in a level or you don't want to target, you just leave it alone. You don't touch it. So we always say people start in the role that they think they're most closely associated with. So if I'm an analyst, I'll start as a data analyst. I'm a data scientist, I start as a data scientist. But then we encourage people that once you've gone through and completed the assessment for your own particular level, that you would then move on and look at, are there any areas that are standing out to me? Because every area will have some commonalities. So every single role has some form of analysis in it. So if you've come from a data analyst, go into the different sections of analysis under engineer, under scientist, under this, because you'll suddenly go, oh, I can do those skills. They're comparable, because unsurprisingly enough, these roles are not like rigid, blocks where skills do not mix. They go across. That's the whole point of being in data and analytics. So you might then find yourself, well, actually, I'm doing a third of what they are saying they do in an analytics engineer, maybe similarly 25% of what they're doing in data engineer. The whole point of the self-assessment tool is it now allows you to document your data and analytics DNA, and it tells you this is how the mixture of skills are deploying. So you are mainly identifying with the data analyst, but you've also are covering your 75% this and 20% that and 10% this, etc. I think I've just gone over 100%. That wouldn't work. But anywho, maths, I'm only an analyst, it's fine. But it allows you then to review that DNA to identify where your strengths are and what skills that you have that transfer into those other roles. It also, we have a functionality this year coming in that allows you to import data. And one of the things we've been doing all this year is the production of standardized agenda for change band role profiles for every grade of the different roles. So for example, for data analysts, we have a standardized role profile for a band 4 all the way through to a band 9. So you could import the role and the grade that you're at and do a bit of a side-by-side comparison of what have I got compared to what the standard is, and am I already like ticking every box? Yay. If I'm not, what is the gaps compared to the standard? Similarly, you could import the grade above and go, how am I stacking up compared to the next step up, etc. Similarly, you could import one from a completely different role and go, how am I stacking up compared to a data scientist role, for example? It gives you that bit of an opportunity this time. Or similarly, if you've done an NCF version 2 assessment, you could import the data from that and compare how you're doing now compared to how you were. So we've allowed that sort of functionality this time. One of the things also historically we've done is we've had a separate like evidence-based log. So it's one thing to say I'm competent at something. It's a very different thing to then start capturing evidence of how I'm competent. And those are the two things that come side by side, because we've always said it's great for people to do self-assessments, but you've got to be able to say how. So what's the example piece of work that I've done that enables me to prove that I've got that skill at that level? And that's one of the things obviously that's essential for you then being able to get your accredited practitioner status from AphA, etc. So we've now decided to bring these things together and have the evidence log as part of the self-assessment tool. So this is something that, having done your assessments and identified the skills that you're saying you could do, you've then got a way of going, right, well then how do I start logging what those evidence pieces are, etc. So I've got things in one place. So you then can start turning around, and when you're wanting to, well, that's the question, isn't it? How do you identify the particular projects you've got? So people are really good generally at going, this is what I do day to day. What you've then got to start doing is going from, if these are the skills and the projects that I've done, what are the underlying stages of that work? And what are then the underlying skills that are needed to develop on that sort of area? So if you're turning around and going, I've produced a dashboard for this, it's like, okay, well, in order to do that, I've had to do multiple sources of data. So I've had to find that. I've had to quality assess that data. I've had to transform that data. They're the different stages. So what you then do is you'd identify from those stages to what the skill is in the competency framework. And then the idea is often you'll be able to use one piece of evidence for multiple pieces of the same competency framework, because one project will tick off loads of different stages and loads of different skills. So that's how we advise people to do it, is to start with what do I do day to day in my current role and work back from that into then providing those as evidence. And then ultimately, if you're going then, right, I've got these other areas, I've got these things where I know I'm struggling with evidence though, you can bring that into your PDP conversations with your bosses, saying, I need to be able to do a project that's going to enable me to sort of demonstrate and evidence this. It just helps you articulate it in a way that you're going, right, this is where I'm having a challenge, etc. And then obviously one of the also things that we've been doing has been mapping training to the competency framework. So as I said, we've made all these standard role profiles. They're up there. We're still working. We've just finished the ones for the evaluation, for the evaluator roles. They'll be going up soon, and we've got them up already. I haven't finished that list. I must have forgot I hadn't finished this slide. But basically we have them up for like data science and data analyst and data engineer, analytics engineer, machine learning engineer, and the evaluator one is going up. data governance is also up there. The one that we're struggling with, because what we do is we get data from the NHS BSA. So it's not just us going finger in the air here. What we do is we work with the BSA to get multiple years worth of NHS jobs data, get all the job descriptions down for those different areas and those different bands, do a comparison then against skills that are being asked for from those jobs at those different bands, and then map those into the competency framework. So we can turn around and go. And then, of course, we also have a profiling tool in the competency framework whereby we have mapped the competencies to the 16 different characteristics from the Agenda for Change. And we have a rough points estimate calculator in there. So it's like a second check that we have. And then based on that, that is then the standard profile that we create. They're all up on Analyst X. The only thing that we're doing obviously at the moment is we're making some tweaks and adjustments and getting some additional data up there in advance of the 19th of March when our version 3 launches and that data input functionality becomes available. And then also, obviously, one of the things, and the Linktree QR code is here, so that takes you to all the different stages and different documents. So one of the things we've also been doing is we launched in April of 2025 the Learning Hub for the NHS Data and Analytics Academy. Now, this is structured around the National Competency Framework structure. So the idea is for data analyst, core competency 1, practitioner level 1, we have then got linked to free to access training material, etc., that meets one or more of the statements that go under that particular competency level. Now, this is always a flexible building. We don't own any of this content. This is us signposting out to training content from free to access providers. We've also been mapping things like the apprenticeship standard so that you would know the right apprenticeship standard for the skills that you're wanting to target, because that's always been a challenge of people maybe being put on the wrong apprenticeships for their skill level, etc. But that learning hub is very much where we are using as our home base for linked to training content, etc. It's still growing and being developed. It is obviously got more content on for the more junior levels because they're the easiest ones to find. When you come to the more senior practitioner level stuff, it is much more experience based than it is something you can go on a course and be taught. So we have more case studies and reports and these types of things as there as evidence for people on that. Obviously, I'm also going to say these things sort of happen as a bit of a triangle. So we have the static learning, we have the interactive elements, peer-to-peer elements through Analyst X, which is obviously our community of practice. If you're not already a member, please join. And that's where you then have that peer-to-peer specialist community learning from each other, their own show and tells, as well as their own supported material that they have created, their own Slack channels, their own GitHub repositories, etc., etc. You can find a massive amount of resources and people to help you develop in those types of communities. And then lastly, obviously, we have our LinkedIn, and this is where we then cross-advertise more. We put things up on the Analyst X events calendar, but this is where we would then cross-advertise our free to access, more interactive elements. So if we're running a hackathon on a particular topic or theme, or if one of our partners from Analyst X is running free to access training. So for example, through Analyst X, people get free introductory SQL training from UK Facts and Dimensions. Got to give them a bit of a plug. So those types of things where people run them for us. We ran a very successful introduction to machine learning stuff with IQVIA back in September, all of which is recorded and uploaded to the system. So these types of things we push out and you'll hear about through the LinkedIn channel as well as through our Analyst X. So how do you get access to everything? Analyst X. It's the easiest place. Get a member. You'll find everything on the National Competency Framework there under Workforce Professionalisation. You'll find all the information about the Academy, everything new, a centralised events calendar of events and events calendar and all those sorts of things on there, so you're never going to miss another webinar again, whether you want to or not. And if you really are desperate, you can actually subscribe to that events and have it as a separate calendar in your Outlook. I'm the only one sad enough, I think, to have done that, but hey ho, it's very useful because then I can point an agent to it in Copilot. Otherwise you can't do it. Also, we aren't just abandoning you. We do also run support for adopters of the National Competency Framework. Now, it's currently on pause because obviously we're rewriting everything before our launch on the 19th. But what we do run is a fortnightly, well, technically we run a weekly event, but it's just 1 week it is a drop-in call for people, and we either have the first half an hour for completely new people who want to come and ask all the dumb questions they might not want to ask in front of anybody else, and then the second half an hour, etc., is for routine adopters who come along, so you can come and ask questions of other people, and that's where we then give our routine verbal updates of progress and what we've been up to. And then on the alternative week, we then have training. And we alternate that training between individual, so stuff that's focusing on the individual tools, the self-assessment tool, how you would use that, and then the alternate training sessions. So there's obviously like 2 training sessions a month. One is for individuals, one is then really focused on managers. So how they would support other people in using the tools, how they would use the manager tool to bring everybody's evidence together so they could have a view across their team, and similarly the strategic tool, so how you would bring multiple teams' results together to have a strategic view across an organization. So that's the support that we are routinely doing, etc. So thank you very much for listening.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. That was great. I think you got the one question, but Andrew, there was one earlier. I don't know if you caught, but someone asked in the chat if there's an evaluator non-digital role in there. So to evaluate the effectiveness of non-digital projects like clinic or interventions and new services.
I did kind of pick that up in the
Okay.
thing. The skills that you have for evaluation are one thing. The what you're going to evaluate is another. And I think the methodologies used to apply some of that evaluation methodology for some of those, particularly new services, would be the same. Clinical interventions, you may be starting to drift into randomized control trials and double blinding and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why we've put it digital in brackets, is because although it's called digital evaluator in GDAD, we were like, actually, we think the emphasis should be the other way around. It's evaluation, brackets, digital. So as you can see from the context here, it is universal evaluation skills, not just with a digital flavor. There are elements here that we've put in, which is key concepts of digital literacy that might then not apply, but the rest of things, the design, the surveying, this and stuff, that's universal. So what we've tried to do is put it skill first, not application first, if that makes any sense.
Perfect. Thank you.
No worries.
Does anyone else have any other questions? You can either put them in the chat or say them if you would like to.
Stunned silence.
Right? Yeah.
I think just one thing from me, Garland, just to say.
You literally just drop in. You don't even have to book. You just turn up. We put, sorry, Andy, we had a question. So yeah, so what we do is we have a recurring invitation that sits in the Analyst X events box. So you can come along to whichever session you want. You don't need to book. You just turn up on a day that you can do. Has the new model moved away from the job grade competencies, so grouping band 5 and 6 together? No, we're still at practitioner level. So in theory, each practitioner level covers more than one grade. What we've done in order to make it more defined between a 5 and a 6 and a 7 and an 8 and etc., is create those standardized role profiles using those job descriptions. So if you wanted to see how does a band 5 data analyst role reflect in the competency framework, then you would take that standardized profile and compare that. So what you'll find is, especially for some of the roles, their definitions are then across practitioner levels, especially when you look at things like the band 7 and things like that. So it does provide more nuance to it, rather than saying, well, 50% of it's a band 5 and if 100% of it's a band 6. It's a lot more nuanced. It's linking what the jobs description skill levels are saying to the framework.
Awesome. Thank you.
The point that I was just going to make, Carolyn, was people may think, well, actually, it's not the right, we're going through massive change at the minute, and there's a lot of things going on. You know, is it the right time for people to be looking at competency frameworks? Absolutely. You
Individually, yeah.
understanding your skill set, and on the competency framework, when you're doing your self-assessment, you can put everything you've ever done. You know, so you can put down that you've done, you know, I've done mapping stuff in the past. I won't probably want to be let loose on doing mapping stuff at the minute, but there's things that you've got that you might not be using in this role, but as your personal, what can I do? What, you know, how do I tap into this sort of different stuff? And as Sarah was saying, maybe as you start to do that read across, and you might look at another job family and go, actually, there's 3 of the competencies here that I have got quite a lot of ticks in. So maybe I expand that search on my, you know, job thing to start to look at this, or how do I build into these sorts of future roles, you know, because it is actually something that I'm going to be interested in. So it's just, it's a gift for now, but it's a gift going forward, you know, for people to be able to use to build yourself up, to recognize the skills that you've got and see how you can develop.
And the useful part, obviously, also for us is once you've got that, I've completed the self-assessment and I started populating my evidence log. It's not just as application is using for professional accreditation. Andy and I use it for obviously evidence logs for how we're progressing. Also using it for our CVs. I'll be really honest, as
Yeah, I was
well
going to
as
say I
then
used it a bit for
prepping for
mine. It was helpful.
interview. Prepping for interviews, like where you know there's going to be questions probably around theme areas, you can then, it's so much easier to then go into that evidence log to go, what have I got that is a really good example of like my communication skills or dealing with difficult situations. Or let's be honest, we all get that question, if you're staying in the NHS, how are you supporting ED&I? And how many of us have given absolutely rubbish answers over the years because we don't know what would be a good skill demonstration of ED&I? Well, competency framework helps you do that. So
Absolutely. What? It looks like there's no other questions. So thank you very much for joining us. And
thank you
we
for
will
inviting us.
hopefully, just before people go, I do post the stuff from Analyst X into the CBD corner of the newsletter as well. So like when you have your events and stuff that you put up on there. So those are also in the magazine. So people can also look there if they want to know what's upcoming. So thank you everybody for coming, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Sarah.
Bye-bye.